Did you know that the wounds of slavery still echo in America over a century later? Many people think history is behind us, but the struggles of African Americans in the 1960s were deeply rooted in the pain of the past. In fact, 70% of black families were living in poverty during the civil rights movement, highlighting the ongoing fight for equality. How did the feelings and tensions from slavery shape their lives and the fight for rights? In this video, we'll discover the connection between those historical struggles and the civil rights movement. In this video, get ready to uncover the threads that connect history to the present. History doesn't heal, it festers until someone screams loud enough. The pain from slavery in the 1860s persisted long after the Civil War, deeply influencing African American experiences for generations. With the abolition of slavery, Jim Crow laws emerged, instituting a harsh regime of racial discrimination and segregation across the South. These laws systematically denied African Americans fundamental rights, perpetuating their oppression under a new facade. As the nation moved into the mid-20th century, the echoes of historical trauma became increasingly apparent during the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. Figures such as Martin Luther King Jr. drew strength from the struggles of their ancestors, igniting a powerful pursuit for dignity and justice. Just as enslaved individuals had once yearned for freedom, the activists of this era fought fiercely to dismantle segregation and secure voting rights, embodying the same resilient spirit. The enduring scars of slavery and ongoing discrimination fueled an unwavering motivation for transformation. This struggle transcended mere legal battles. It was a profound fight for humanity, dignity, and equality, an ongoing legacy anchored in the historical quest for true freedom. As African Americans engaged in this fight, they not only honored their past, but also forged a path towards a more equitable future. As the struggle for equality continued, hard-won rights often faced fierce resistance. Despite the promise of the 14th and 15th Amendments, Jim Crow laws quickly followed, undermining those hopes and keeping systemic racism alive. This ongoing battle set the stage for the mid-20th century, where activists in the civil rights movement rose to challenge these injustices, drawing from a legacy of perseverance that began with the end of slavery. Key events that showcase the ongoing struggle for equality in America trace back to the conclusion of slavery in 1865. This pivotal moment not only marked the end of enslavement, but also initiated the Reconstruction era, a period filled with potential for transformative change. During these years, the passage of the 14th and 15th Amendments granted citizenship and voting rights to formerly enslaved individuals, igniting hopes for a more equitable society. However, these aspirations encountered formidable opposition in the form of Jim Crow laws, which emerged in the late 1800s and entrenched racial segregation while disenfranchising black Americans for decades. As the nation progressed into the mid-20th century, the fight for justice took on new dimensions. In 1954, the landmark Supreme Court case, Brown v. Board of Education, declared public school segregation unconstitutional, delivering a significant blow to the Jim Crow system. This legal victory laid the groundwork for further advancements, culminating in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. While this legislation represented a major milestone, it became evident that the struggle was far from over. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 aimed to eliminate barriers preventing black Americans from exercising their right to vote, reinforcing their participation in democracy. Fast forward to the present, and the legacy of these movements continues with contemporary activism, exemplified by organizations like Black Lives Matter. Reports indicate that in some regions, 25% of eligible black voters encounter obstacles at the polls, highlighting the ongoing need for vigilance and advocacy. This narrative illustrates a long, relentless journey, a battle not merely for rights but for dignity, justice, and equality for all, with each generation contributing to the legacy of this essential struggle. As the fight for equality continued into the mid-20th century, new leaders emerged who built upon the foundations laid by those before them. Two prominent figures, one from the 19th century and the other from the 20th, exemplified this ongoing struggle. He used powerful words to challenge a nation's contradictions, while he led peaceful protests to demand civil rights. Despite their different approaches, both men shared a vision of justice and dignity for all, showing that the quest for equality is a journey that never truly ends. Frederick Douglass and Martin Luther King Jr. both championed the cause of racial equality, yet their methods and contexts differed significantly. Douglass, a former enslaved individual of the 19th century, wielded the power of the written word to expose the contradictions of a nation that celebrated freedom while upholding slavery. His profound speeches and writings, such as "What to the Slave is the 4th of July," not only articulated the deep pain of his own experiences, but also sparked critical conversations about morality and civil rights. His efforts laid a vital foundation for future generations, urging society to confront its injustices. Despite the differences in their approaches, the essence of Douglass's and King's messages intertwined across time. Both leaders fought against the enduring legacy of slavery and sought justice for African Americans, highlighting that the struggle for equality is a continuous journey. Their legacies serve as a reminder that, although the context may shift, the fight against oppression and the quest for dignity and justice remain as relevant today as they were in their respective eras. Despite the strong foundations laid by Douglass and King, the road to racial equality took many twists and turns after the Civil War. The passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments initially promised freedom and rights for African Americans, yet the reality often fell short as new barriers emerged. These amendments marked significant progress, but they also set the stage for a struggle against the oppressive Jim Crow laws that would challenge the very rights they aimed to secure. After the Civil War, 3 critical amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th, were enacted to elevate the status of African Americans. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, marking a monumental shift in the nation's moral landscape. The initial hope felt immense as individuals emerged from bondage, yearning for a future filled with possibilities. Following this, the 14th Amendment granted citizenship and equal protection under the law to everyone born in the U.S., including former slaves. This amendment opened a new chapter, promising rights and privileges that had long been denied. The 15th Amendment, ratified in 1870, aimed to secure voting rights for African American men, ensuring that states could not disenfranchise citizens based on race. However, the promise of these amendments was soon undermined by the emergence of Jim Crow laws in southern states, which enforced systemic segregation and discrimination. These laws represented a cruel paradox. While the amendments heralded freedom and rights, Jim Crow imposed new forms of oppression, akin to running a race with insurmountable obstacles placed against one side. Statistics illustrate this regression vividly. By 1900, the number of registered African American voters in the South had plummeted drastically, from over 90% in some areas immediately after the war to less than 10%, largely due to voter suppression tactics, such as literacy tests and poll taxes. Thus, even as the amendments initially opened doors, Jim Crow violently shut them, revealing the deeply entrenched challenges that would haunt the struggle for equality for decades to come. This ongoing battle for civil rights illustrates that the journey toward true equality remained fraught with hurdles, necessitating relentless perseverance and advocacy in the face of systemic injustices. The same systemic racism that flourished during the Jim Crow era continued to deny many the opportunities that were meant to be theirs, demonstrating that the fight for true equality was far from over, and discrimination, which were exacerbated by historical injustices. In 1960, nearly 47% of African Americans lived below the federal poverty line, starkly contrasting with the 22% of white Americans. This discrepancy underscored the persistent systemic racism that had been embedded in society long after slavery and the Jim Crow era. Although the Civil Rights Act of 1964 abolished legal segregation, many African Americans continued to face barriers in employment, education, and housing. The metaphor of a race became increasingly poignant. While some received a head start, others remained shackled by the weight of centuries of oppression. In urban centers like Chicago and New York, discriminatory lending practices further perpetuated inequality, hindering African Americans from securing loans necessary to purchase homes. This relegated many to underfunded neighborhoods, trapping them in a cycle of poverty that felt insurmountable. Reports indicated that around 90% of African Americans were born into such circumstances, making the climb toward economic stability feel like an uphill battle without proper tools. Recognizing the depth of these injustices, the leaders of the civil rights movement understood that achieving true equality extended beyond dismantling legal barriers. It necessitated the provision of tangible opportunities and resources. As President Lyndon B. Johnson emphasized, civil rights encompassed not only liberation from oppression, but also the ability to access the gates of opportunity. Despite the strides made during this era, the data from the 1960s revealed a harsh reality. The struggle for equality was ongoing, and the lingering effects of slavery continued to fester, awaiting the collective voices strong enough to demand lasting change. The legacy of slavery is a haunting echo throughout American history, shaping the lives of African Americans for generations. As we've explored, the pain from that dark past festers, fueling the fight for civil rights in the 1960s. Activists didn't simply inherit the struggle, they were ignited by it. Figures like Martin Luther King Jr. stood on the shoulders of ancestors like Frederick Douglass, each voice amplifying the urgent demand for justice. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were significant milestones, yet they didn't mark the end. Today, as we witness acts of protest and advocacy against systemic racism, we see that the battle for dignity and equality is far from over. Each generation must continue this crucial work, proving that, while history may never fully heal, it gives birth to resilience and hope. The past may wound, but it also teaches. The voices of Douglass, King, and those yet unnamed still echo through time. If you listen closely, young traveler, you'll hear them guiding you forward.